Hello and welcome to another episode. Hey, it's that. Today I'm happy to interview a new person in my life, a fun story to unpack here. This is Kat Jayme. Now, Kat is a filmmaker who directed can I say breakthrough? Is
Yeah,
that the right word for what that was?
yeah, totally.
A breakthrough documentary called Finding Big Country. For those of you who are fans of the NBA or certainly fans of the Vancouver Grizzlies, whose short and storied existence of only 6 seasons was documented by Kat. And so I came across this film because A, I like basketball. B, I grew up in Vancouver. I remember when the Grizzlies came around, and I moved to Toronto in '99, so I missed their actual leaving, and that was the height of Vince Carter's fame out there. So that kind of had my attention at the time. But I was really drawn to your film because it was like this sore spot and this kind of bruise in Vancouver's kind of sports history for a while. And I think the way that you tackled that was I was admirable, and it was like half biopic and half documentary. And
Mhm.
so I watched it on YouTube, and there'll be a link here to for anybody to check it out. And then I emailed you like when the credits were rolling because I that's just kind of my way. I like to meet people that I think are up to interesting things. And
Mhm.
so for the purposes of anybody watching or listening, this is the first time you and I have actually met, right?
Yes, yeah. We've
And
corresponded a few times, but yeah, this is the first time we're actually talking.
right, and in a COVID reality, that was like January, right?
Mhm.
This is as close as it gets to having a coffee,
It's
right?
true. This is our new normal. Yeah.
Sure, it sure is. And so a little bit more background. Um, there was a NBA qualifier that was scheduled to be, or no, NBA, sorry, Olympic qualifier that was scheduled to be in Victoria right now, like this June. And the way it was shaping up was Canada was due to play Greece. And a number of NBA players for the first time said, we'll play for Canada. People like Jamal Murray, and we had things like Andrew Wiggins lining up. So for the first time, Canada international basketball in the men's game was about to involve NBA players. And that's right in my backyard. And so I'm like, okay, I got to get involved in this. And long story short, there was also the NBA preseason game here back in October, and there was this art gallery called the NBA Gallery. They opened up in Gastown. I thought it was fantastic. It was really cool. And so I reached out to you point blank, out of nowhere. I'm some weird guy online who saw your film, and you probably get a lot of that. So it was like, hey, there's something artistic happening. You're doing artistic things. You're interested in basketball. Maybe we could have a discussion about that, which led to this moment here today.
Mhm.
So maybe, tell me a bit more about your background. And certainly in the film, it's pretty clear about your love for the Grizzlies and basketball. But tell me about filmmaking today. What's happening in your world today as a documentary or just a filmmaker in period?
Totally. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's great to finally connect. So I mean, finding the country was a it's a it was a long dream in the making.
Yes.
Um, I always say that I started to dream about making this film when I was in film school back in like 2008.
Hmm.
Um, and was always like, someone is going to make this film, and like if I'm not if it's not me, like I'm gonna kick myself because I know that there's such a great story here. And I really felt like no one could tell it like I could because of all the archives that I kept, because of my personal connection. And then when I was doing my research, I was like, oh my God, like, every article that I found about the Grizzlies, there was like one line that was like, no one's been able to track
Hmm.
down Bryant, or we haven't, we haven't seen or heard of Bryant since he left town. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I love Bryant. And wouldn't it be so cool if like if I could get him? Like that was
Hmm.
sort of like my hook. I was like, that would be so great. So yeah, so my team and I, we made Finding Big Country. But I will say, so even though I made Finding Big Country, my dream has always been to tell the full story of the Grizzlies. So what happened from beginning to end. And
Hmm.
so that's what my team and I are actually doing right now. So Finding Big Country is sort of like a proof of concept film, to help us get sort of like the bigger project, the dream project made.
Right.
And we were gaining momentum after a year of like trying to put all the puzzle pieces together with funding, with pitching and whatnot. And we were just about to like to hit go on the whole thing. We were about to go to Memphis because they were just about to where we were gonna
Right. They're the
26.
throwbacks.
Yeah, the throwback jerseys. They're gonna play Toronto, and Toronto and Vancouver are gonna wear the throwback jerseys. Then
Right.
obviously COVID happened, and I'm really grateful that the NBA did what they did because I feel like they're the ones who kind of put this on overdrive, and the whole world kind of shut down after the
I
NBA
agree.
took a lead. And to be honest with you, like I wouldn't have wanted to got like I didn't I wouldn't have wanted to travel. Like I would have felt very uncomfortable like on a plane. Also in the States, like with like like our insurance and whatnot. So I'm glad that our team didn't end up going to that trip on that trip, even though obviously like I'm also like very bummed that
Yeah.
I wasn't able to see that in person and live because I was like yeah, I've been waiting for that day for that game for so long. But yeah, we've had to hit pause just like everyone else. And so I guess yeah, the next few months like we've just been trying to plan, trying to do research, trying to conduct interviews over the phone, like research interviews. But how this film will play out, like I'm still not 100% sure because
Hmm.
everything. But I mean, the nice thing is knowing that everyone is feeling the same thing. I guess
Right.
that's my only sort of the thing that I'm okay. Everyone's going through this. It's not just me, which is a
Hmm.
nice feeling. But it's still like, yeah, it's still very like I'm very anxious about what the future holds in terms of for documentaries as a whole, for films as a whole, but not just for filmmaking. There's so many other areas that I feel yeah everyone's kind of feeling this way.
And kind of funny that, creatively speaking, when you look at the arc of your basketball career to UBC, and that is cut short.
Mhm,
Big Country's career in the NBA, that is cut short.
mhm.
You pulled off one documentary, that went okay, but now this one is cut short. Like there's always something in the way. Maybe that's kind of one of the interesting, lessons here is like you just can't ever get home again almost, right?
Yeah, that's actually a good point. And it's interesting because documentaries are all about you have this idea, and it usually because it's real life, you can't script it.
Hmm.
So you usually, most often than not, um, it doesn't happen the way that you planned. And it's your job as a documentary filmmaker, it's our job to pivot. And
Mm.
like so that's what's happening right now. But it's so extreme that I don't even know. Like I mean, I'm hoping that things get better. Like I'm trying to be optimistic and hopeful
Yes.
because we're used to pivoting and we're used to changing things up. But I feel like this is like to the extreme because this is like the whole your whole concept kind of needs to change as well.
Hmm. Yeah.
Especially because with this film, like you know, I'm supposed to be traveling quite a bit to the States because we're we're tracking like a lot of these former players who all live in the States. So yeah, it's hopefully like we won't, things get better, um, and and we're able to contain and flatten the curve and hopefully find a cure, vaccine, or both,
Hmm.
treatment, and we're able to get going in the next year. I mean, it's not going to happen right away, but sometime next year, I'm hoping that we're able to start shooting.
Yeah, I understand. I think everybody's got that kind of shared hope and delayed. This has been normal now. You see scenes of NBA games and things like that. It's hard to believe that's in the cards. You know what I mean? We're so
Mhm,
now used to this kind of social distancing reality in that way.
mhm.
So I'm totally with you on that. Let's take that idea of the pivoting and documentary and stuff, because one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is um, so for those who haven't seen it yet, you grew up a Grizzlies fan when like you were 7 when they
Yeah,
first came, right?
6 or 7, yeah, 7, yeah, yeah.
So Big Country is like an idol, right, and a sports hero, and then you literally end up, in the span of what 20 years ish, you're now playing one on one with this guy. So
Yeah, yeah.
so what is that like, the transfer of, like, you know, and you addressed it a bit in the film, but like the person's almost like a peer for you now when you know you're both not in basketball, and now here you are playing one-on-one with this guy in his
Mhm.
home court, right? So what is that transfer of um, self-identity of like, okay, this is Big Country, I got to find him, I'm perfect to make this film, to actually hanging out with this guy for an afternoon? Like what is that like?
Oh man, I mean, as much as he is a retired NBA player, like, when you watch the film, I'm like trying to keep my cool like the entire time. And
I can
there are
imagine. Yeah.
moments that hit the cutting room floor when I look at the camera and I'll be like what is happening? Like this is crazy. Like I can't believe I'm in Oklahoma, and I've been to Oklahoma now 3 times, which like I never thought
Yeah.
why would I go to Oklahoma?
Right.
And for him to be so kind and welcoming, um, was just, it was a huge relief. There's that saying like never meet your childhood hero, and I always
Right.
say that, I'll always add like, never meet your childhood hero unless they're Big Country Bryant Reeves, because um, you know, he didn't even meet my expectations. He really, he went over and beyond what I was hoping he would be. And I'm not. It's hard because like you don't want to put these athletes on a pedestal, but it's hard when you're a kid
Hmm.
and like they're
That's what
just
it's all about.
so like they're larger than life, and they are when you go to games, it's so magical. And as a kid, there I never bumped into or like met any of the Grizzlies when they were in town. Like I had a lot of friends who would see like, Bryant at the grocery store
Hmm.
or at Steveston, and like, would ask for autographs and whatnot. I never, like, I wish I was that kid, but
Yeah.
I was, and as much as I went to games, like I never was like, I was always never like courtside, never like super duper duper close to the court. And I always wanted to be a ball girl. I always wanted to be picked to be like that kid that does like the halftime, like, like I like, especially when they were like the games where they would have to do like a layup or like shoot. I was like, I
Yes.
can do that. Like,
Right.
how do I get picked? How do I be seen by whoever, makes that decision?
Hmm.
And so to be talking to all these players that I like admired was really just like I'm a kid in a candy store, to be honest. And so, but I think Bryant did a really good job of just being so humble.
Hmm.
And from his friends, like learning about him, and they would say, Kat, if you were to just to meet Bryant today and you had no idea who he was, like he would never bring up that he was a professional like NBA
Right.
player. It's just
Yeah.
something, you would have to Google it, or maybe someone would tell you like, hey, like, do you know Bryant is he's an NBA superstar, and you'd be like, what? Like I had no idea. And I totally get that. And I think it's something that I really respect about Bryant. One of the things that I love learning about him is that he really doesn't care about the limelight.
Hmm.
And I think that's it's so it's so different from what we see today, when everyone is just like, on social media and whatnot, and I am too. So I'm not, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just, it's nice to meet someone who just like doesn't care.
Yeah, like genuinely, right? Not from
Yeah,
a bad place, but just focused on his own, right?
yeah, exactly.
I
Just like
think that really came
loves,
through.
yeah, and loves spending time on his ranch, loves, spending time with his family, being a dad, is there for his friends. Like, he's kind of I don't know, like I share Finding Big Country with students in high school and elementary schools, and I think we talk about like what it means to be like a role model and an athlete.
Mm,
And I think Bryant really embodies that. Not that he's trying to be, but
yes.
that's just who he is. But I think kids at a young age can really learn from that. So yeah,
Hmm.
and I think I'm glad, I think, thanks for saying that. But I do think that I was hoping to capture that. his
Well,
essence and like his compass. Yeah.
I think that comes through, and almost the strongest part of that is through when you're interviewing his friends. Like I think the gentleman's name is Steve Woodruff. I
Yeah.
watched
Yeah.
I watched it again last night.
Oh yeah.
So when you're having that chat out there by the fence,
Mhm.
and he starts to get all emotional, like
Yeah.
you can't help but love that moment because that really expresses, I think, exactly what you're talking about. Like he says it in his own words, the effect of like some guy from our little small town became one of the greatest NBA players in the world and went up against Michael Jordan and the best. And
Mhm.
he's my friend from down the block.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was really charming.
Totally. And that's it was such a powerful moment. And like I think that's what I also, came to love. Like there's a lot of things that I learned about Bryant um in his story, because I just knew he was this guy from Gans, like Oklahoma. I didn't really know what that meant. But
Hmm.
yeah, as I was doing my research, I was like, oh my God, like it is super incredible how he came from this super small town and he made it to the
Hmm.
big leagues and he played against all these players, and not only that, he came back, and he like, because he really could have lived anywhere.
True.
um and the fact that he came back and he just, he never forgot where he came from, and I think
Hmm.
that's also, super powerful and super, one of the things that I really love learning about Bryant. Another thing I loved learning about Bryant was that he never asked for a trade, which is, is in the film, which I
Right.
was like, wasn't 100% sure, because the Grizzlies were not, the
Good.
most fun team to play for.
Yes. Right.
And especially he's the only player that was there from the very beginning to the very end.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I was kind of afraid to ask, like, did you ever want out? And if you look at his, what he calls his man cave,
Hmm.
and or like his court, he's so proud to have played for Vancouver, which as a Vancouverite and as a childhood fan was just like the coolest thing that I could have learned about him.
Yes. No, I totally get that. And I think you saw in parallel, like my time in Toronto, the Raptors were, they like the purple dinosaur when it all broke. Like I'm in my 20s when NBA came to Canada, and so we were like, Jurassic Park just came out. Like it was smart, like you're targeting a youth demo and things like that, but there wasn't that kind of validity until you got to that kind of Vince Carter element there in Toronto in that same way. And so I totally agree with you. I think in Vancouver we have this kind of identity crisis almost. It's like we can host the Olympics and we're awesome at things like that, and we can be this great international city, but we still get stoked. We still have this kind of like small town kind of pride when you see something like what you're just describing there, right? um, it's not like a spotlight city. It's kind of like the best kept secret city, right?
Yeah, 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 totally. I like that. Yeah.
So let's talk about the unavoidable conversation everywhere in the past couple of weeks, right?
Mhm.
Um, which is, of course, the topic of racism and how it's being addressed and how it's being not addressed, and systemic racism. A lot of people are unpacking this. And as you and I prepared to do this interview, we talked about, okay, this is not the right time for that conversation. I think when you emailed me, you literally said there's other voices right now
Mhm.
that are a priority. Where
Mhm.
does that sit in your scope as a filmmaker? Is there a responsibility? This is all new, like, well, it's not new. That's the problem, isn't it? This is
Mhm.
now an unavoidable conversation, I guess is what I'm saying. And does that influence your role as a filmmaker?
Yes, I mean, sorry, 1 second.
That's okay.
My phones are going off. Yeah, I think it's yeah, you're right. It's not new, but I think it's always been there, but we're just starting to talk about it.
Mm.
And I think film is such an important medium,
Yeah.
and film is such an important medium. The stories we tell are so important, and the people who tell it are so important, and the people who are in the stories are so important. And I think I'm hoping to see a shift in in how we use this medium to elevate voices that need to be heard, stories that that have been forgotten, or just when people say, when, you know, broadcasters or whatnot say, you know, I don't think there's an audience for this. There is an audience for this.
Hmm.
You know, you just have, like, there is an audience for this. There are people who need to hear these stories. And I think we're going to start to see a shift. And that's my hope, that voices that, and stories that haven't been given like the mainstream, like, attention, finally, you know, finally do. And so, you know, I think, you know, as a storyteller, um, you know, as you know, as a female Filipina storyteller, like, you know, I do think that there is going to be, you know, a shift, and I think that we all have to, yeah, I think people are starting to realize how there's so much power in all these, in all these mediums, especially film, and trying to find your voice in it, and trying to use your voice to help elevate others as well.
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, so it's a really interesting time. I'm still learning quite a bit, but I'm really just trying to think about, yeah, the power that film has,
Hmm.
and how important it is for people to see themselves on screen, how important it is to have, you know, the right storytellers. Like, not everyone can tell a certain story, you know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
is it your story to tell? I think that's a, you know, and I think that's such an important question that I'm even asking myself when I think I want to tell a story. It's like, well, wait a second, like, am I really the right person to tell the story? Is this my story to tell? And I think that question, will be asked, hopefully more so, and yeah, that we see better representation. And, you know, I think it's so powerful when you see yourself on screen, and it's such a, like, I don't even know how to explain it. For example, you know, watching, like, for example, like Black Panther or Wonder Woman, like, when I, you know, I was in my 30s when, or late 20s, early 30s when these films came out. No, I was in my 20s still. But it was just so crazy to me, you know, for Wonder Woman, when you see all these women in that fight scene, like on the beach. It was crazy. And I know I'm not the only one who felt this way. Like, I was talking to my cousins and my friends, and I was like, wasn't that, it was so jarring for me. And it was so jarring that it was jarring. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, "Oh my god, I have never seen this before in my life. Like, how is that possible that I'm in, like, 28 or 29,
Hmm.
and this is the first time I'm seeing this? And how powerful would it be if I, you know, thinking of, like, I can't, like, I'm so excited, for this younger generation, you
Hmm.
know, for my nieces and nephews who are just kids, and they get to see this at such a young age. Because how different would, you know, how different would things be if I saw this as a kid, you know? And so I think we're going to start to see it change, because there is a new generation who is wanting this more, who's going to demand this more, and who's getting to, because things are, like, they're starting to change. And I think it's going to change even more. Um, that, yeah, they're just going to be, yeah, I think, a lot of good things are happening, and we're going to see that with this younger generation coming up, which is very cool, and I'm excited for.
I think you certainly, you know, got me for a moment there when you were talking about, is it my story to tell?
Mhm,
Because in my world, which is mostly located in marketing, branding, and that kind of stuff,
mhm,
all these brands marched out last week with statements, you know, some better than others,
mhm,
admittedly, and there's opinions on that. And now we're seeing fallout from other companies whose employees are saying, well, that statement was nice, but working here, it ain't like that, right? So
yeah, yeah.
there's a lot of incongruity. And so I was kind of thinking that over the week, and I don't want to say happy, but like I was relieved a bit to see your message about let's wait a bit, let's not publish anything,
Mhm,
um, and give this a little bit of time,
mhm,
because I felt the same sort of thing. I didn't really realize it at the time, whether or not I was really struggling with, is it my story to tell? You know
mhm,
what I mean? Like, maybe it's time just to be in the back seat. And but
mhm,
the other side of it was, if you were silent or you didn't express an opinion, that meant you were complicit with the
mhm,
structure.
mhm.
And that's, I think, also, I don't know, is that a dangerous position? Is being silent on a topic like that? What do you think about that? Because I haven't decided what I think about that yet.
It's, you know what, it's very, I think it's a very, yeah, I'm still, I'm having these conversations with friends because I'm not, you know, you know, I have friends who are like, you know, everyone has a platform now
Hmm.
and, you know, we need to use our voice. And I 100% agree. But I do understand, like, I understand your thought. In terms of like there are two sides to it. There's the one side, it's like, you know, I need to step back and amplify other voices, but at the same time, if I don't say anything, am I being complicit? And I do see that tension, and I
Hmm.
see, but I don't know, it's a good question. I think I don't know if there's a right or wrong,
Right.
although it seems like there is.
Right. It
um
does seem that way.
Yeah, I do. I mean, right now, I think where I stand with that is that I think people definitely, everyone has a voice, whether it be on social media or offline. I mean, obviously offline, especially offline.
Hmm.
I think it's important for people, and I kind of struggled with this as well because I was like, I'm not sure, you know, what do I do?
Hmm.
And I think it's what I've come, I think where I'm landing right now after, like, you know, having these conversations, because I'm also kind of confused. It's a yeah, is that just do what feels truthful to you,
Hmm.
um and yeah, and know that whatever work that you're doing, and I'm hoping, like, you know, it's great to see. I love seeing it, like, it's very cool for me to see all my friends posting, and, like, you know, and
Hmm.
I it makes me super hopeful that, like, oh my god, like, there's so many of us who want this change and who are doing the work. um and yeah, like, when I think, you know, I think when if you're trying to figure out if should I post, should I not post, I think there'll probably be a time when you're like, okay, yeah, I'm ready, I've thought about what I want to say.
Hmm.
And, like, you know, don't use your platform just to use it, um just to say something because you're afraid of what people are might say. Like, say it when you are ready
Hmm.
to say whatever you want to say on social media. But then there's obviously the offline work that everyone's doing that I think is also, you know, as important, even more important, because that's where the work actually happens. But yeah, I do think that there is, you know, at the first few days, I mean, this is so new to have social media during a time like this. Like, we've
Right.
not seen this before. And I think everyone is just trying to, like, at least I'm just trying to figure out, okay, what's my role in this, as you know, because social media is a tool right now. It's a tool to help with this, um you know, with this movement. And what is my relationship to it? What is my role and my responsibility to, you know, in this whole thing as well, because I use social media. So yeah, so I think it's a great conversation. And I think, you know, I'm happy that a lot of people are having it, and are trying to figure out this space. And I think it's okay um to not know. Yeah, just to, you know, it's, yeah, I think we're all just navigating this space right now, and to know that, just be true to yourself. A- and and you know, and elevate, for sure, elevate, the voices that need to be heard right now.
Hmm.
If that makes any sense. I feel like I'm just rambling right now.
No, that's okay. Like, I think it helps to, like I've been doing this for, like, maybe 10 days, kind of it's going through my head. And when you start to articulate it, I think a lot of times that helps, like, organize our own thoughts, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So, what about other areas of attention right now? Like we've been in lockdown for what feels like 3,000 months, but it's only been almost three.
Yeah.
Like, what's on your playlist? Like, what are you paying attention to,
Mhm.
media wise?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, I'm reading so many articles about, like, COVID and, like, what's going on. Like, the past, you know, few months have just been, it's just been a lot with the pandemic. Like, um, you know, especially at the first month or so, just just trying to understand what's happening, understand, like, hey, like, what's safe, what's not safe. Um, do I wear a mask? Do I not wear a mask? I'm on the camp of like wear a mask.
Yeah, yeah,
We'll
I'm
say
with you.
that.
Yes.
Um, and just like, you know, especially just, um, you know, I have family in the Philippines, and how countries like that are treating it. Like, you know,
Hmm.
it's almost somewhat like martial law over there
Right.
with like military checkpoints, and like it's just very interesting.
Yeah, I've seen things like that. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how different countries respond, how citizens within each country respond to like the rules the government puts in place. Um, and so yeah, so I guess that, you know, that has been taking up a lot of my time, and obviously The Last Dance.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So I think everyone was like, um, was watching that.
I bought
Um,
a pair of like Air Jordan 1s. It was like my COVID midlife crisis
that's
purchase.
amazing.
Like buying a
Yep.
motorbike for, NBA fans.
That's awesome. Yeah. You know, and that was, yeah, that was such a, you know, Jason Hare's, you know, one of my favorite filmmakers. Um, the Fab Five, which is another ESPN 30 for 30, is one of my favorite like sports or documentaries and sports documentaries. But
Yeah.
I didn't actually realize that he directed the series, but I was, you know, super stoked when I found out. And yeah, it was such a, I mean, I think he could have made anything and I would have loved it, just because like that era of sport, of NBA basketball or sports in general,
Hmm.
is so mystical. Like especially now, because we have social media, we know what our favorite athletes like to eat. We know what their houses look like. We know who their kids are.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, everything is like is put out there. But like back then, like, and I think that's why there's such a, um, you know, with the Grizzly story, it's the same kind of feeling. It's like, oh my God, I've never, who are these people? You know, like what are their lives like, and what are they really like? What are their personalities like?
Hmm.
And, you know, just seeing Michael Jordan, I think Jason says this in an interview that he did, like seeing, you know, Michael Jordan driving in a car, like footage of that is like, oh my God, he's driving in a car. You know what I mean? Like it's just so like,
There's just no access.
yeah, there was no access back then.
Hmm.
And for us to see Michael, like when Michael spoke out at Kobe Bryant's, you know, celebration of life back
Hmm.
in February, I think it
I
was.
think so. Yeah.
Like when I saw him, I was like, oh my God, like I felt like I was seeing it like an old friend that I had not seen in years.
Hmm.
And I was like, wow, MJ, like we've not seen him really.
Hmm.
And like I don't know what he like, you know, he's not like Shaq or Charles Barkley, who, you know, he's really
They're
just
out there, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so yeah, the Last Dance was, you know, and it was crazy how they were editing as they were still going. Like they, you know, when episode one and two dropped, they were still working on like
Oh,
the
really? I didn't
later
know.
episodes. Yeah, they were editing as they were going, because they were not supposed to release the series until
Hmm.
like, you know, July or I don't know, August or sometime in the summer. But
Yeah.
obviously with COVID, they, you know, they decided to release it earlier.
I didn't know that. And so like my thinking around that was they're just spacing, like I thought it was all shot, done, ready to go, but they
Mhm.
were spacing it out so that we had something in our lives.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Um, and then I've actually been watching some just like very some old sci-fi TV shows
Oh
from
yeah,
like
cool.
early 2000s, just because like I just need something that's light.
Yeah. Like
Like
what shows specifically?
like oh my gosh, my stepdad got me into this TV series that's kind of like um oh my gosh, what's that show called? uh Warrior Prince. It's called
Xena?
Legends of
Is that what you're
Xena.
talking about?
But
Yeah.
it's like that. It's called Legends of the Seeker.
Mm,
Legend of the Seeker. Anyways,
okay.
I watched that like the first month we were in lockdown, and it was very good. But I just needed something that was like that was entertaining, but also
Yeah.
just light and wouldn't make me feel anxious.
I totally get it. Like escapism is, I think, a big part of that, and that's a role that sports used to hold. You know what I mean? Like, sports would always, be related to politics or other topics of the day, but for the most part, it was about kind of forgetting about all that stuff. And
Mm,
for me, like that was a thing. That was the level of escapism. and you pay attention to the story arcs, the standings, all that kind of stuff that would go along with it. So I'm with you. It's like shows like that, let's call it candy. Like
Yeah.
it tastes good, but it's not great for you, but it's part of life, right?
Yeah,
Especially right now.
that's so true. And yeah, I mean, it's crazy how long we've gone without sports, and
Yes.
it'll be interesting to see. I mean, the NBA's, what this next run will look like
Hmm.
with the playoffs being televised without any audio. Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, well, I think you probably have some interesting opinions on that because, like, I think there's an opportunity to innovate broadcast. If we looked at just, you know, have those games the way that we would just without fans, I think we're missing an opportunity. And I think there could be ways, and because I don't work in this industry, I don't know exactly what they are, but there must be different ways that we can innovate what it means to put a televised game on TV, in a fanless environment. What are other ways that we can make it visually interesting? Or I'm not sure what that is. Any thoughts on what that might look like?
That's a good question. I don't know. Like it's like I had actually never thought of that. The only thing, as you were saying that, I was like, would it be like a really big like Zoom, like
I
you
don't
could
know.
have it here, and then you could have like hundreds of thousands of people. But the problem with that, I think, is that for every like good idea where you try to bring people together, there's going to be like trolls who
Yes,
like ruin it for everyone else.
it's
So
true. It's true.
so I mean, because that would actually be kind of cool. But I guess what you would do is like you could probably do like as if you had like two screens, like you would watch the show, and then it's probably something you do with your friends, like everyone, let's watch this game together, and everyone can go on Zoom.
Hmm.
But it would have to be password protected because you would have
Right.
like the Zoom like trolls, like because I've been on a Zoom dance party when trolls come on, and it's just
Really?
like, yeah, it's like it's so, yeah, it was ridiculous. But I was like, it when I first started seeing that, I was like, man, like, why do we need to like, why?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
What can I say? That's the other side of human nature. Maybe there's a lot to be said for unpacking that sort of mentality, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It just boggles my mind. But I mean, I think people were saying, I'm not sure if they're gonna put like a laugh track, but just
Mm.
like clapping, or I don't.
Yeah. Well,
It's gonna
I've read
be,
a couple things about piping in sound effects from like NBA,
oh, 2K.
2K20.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've seen things in Europe where they have, or maybe it's Taiwan, maybe it's baseball. I'm not 100% sure, but like cardboard cutouts and like just kind of props basically. I don't know. I think the innovation could be in audio. So like there's there's probably a lot of language that's not really suitable for broadcast, but
Mhm.
that's going to be the only sound. It's going to be a lot of squeaking and a lot of chatter. So I think the audio has a lot of potential.
Mhm.
Like you're going to be able to hear things that were just not possible. So the roar of the crowd is something, but the other side of it is everything that you're missing,
Yes. And
right?
I'm actually like, as much as hockey for, yeah, like I guess, oh no, 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 never mind. I forgot what I was gonna say. But I was excited to be like, man, we're actually gonna hear what these players are saying to each other. And that is kind
Yes.
of cool too. So maybe that is maybe it's something that we can, it might be weird not to have the crowd, but
Hmm.
it'll be something different. But maybe yeah, something different, and different doesn't have to mean that it's bad or worse
Yeah,
than.
less
Yeah,
exactly, right? Um, let's take a couple more questions and we'll
yeah,
call
yeah,
it a morning.
yeah.
What motivates you? So, maybe before and even during the current situation, like what gets you going?
Hmm. I mean, I always know my next project, what my next project will be, when I think of someone else again, someone else beating me to the punch.
Uh-huh.
Um, and not to not to sound super political, but I do like when I think about the Grizzlies documentary. I was like, someone is going to tell this, and that
Hmm.
someone is probably going to be a guy. If it's not like, if I don't make it.
Hmm.
And that's especially with Finding Big Country, I was like, oh man, like I know a guy's like, if this story is going to be told, And if it's, you know, if I don't get my act together and I don't act fast, like someone's going to tell it, and most likely it's going to be a dude. And
Hmm.
if you look at like ESPN 30 for 30s, I was doing kind of, I wanted to know how many female directors there were. And I think there's like 106 episodes, and uh, there's around, I might be off by one or two.
Yeah.
There are 6 female directors.
Right. There's the ratio across just about everything, though, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, totally, totally. And so, you know, and especially, you know, I think that's what motivates me, is that, you know, I feel like there need like we women, we play sports, we watch sports, we love it, we it's entertaining for us.
Hmm.
Have to populate, you know, like we need to be part of these narratives as well, and or part of, you know, the part of shaping these narratives. um and you know, I just think of how impactful, like for example, I loved the NBA. I wanted to be like Big Country. I thought I could be like Big Country and Sharif and Bibby, but I'm not like a 6'1" like Caucasian like guy, you know, but that's how I perceived myself for such a long time. And the reason that was because the WNBA was starting, like it did exist, but here in Canada we got very little exposure to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you know, I didn't, there was no internet back then as well. And
Hmm.
so like I knew some players by name, but I never watched a game as a kid.
The only one I can think of from that era is Cheryl Swoops.
Cheryl Hoops, yeah. And maybe there was like, you know, when I was able to like buy a book about the basketball as a kid, there might be like, you know, a page about it or something. Like I
Hmm.
never, and so it was really interesting. I was on another like Instagram like live interview the other day, and my friend was interviewing me for his show, and he brought his daughter in. She's 11, and I was
Hmm.
like, hey, like who's your favorite player? And she was like, Sue Bird. And I was like, that's amazing. Like
Hmm.
I was so happy because like to be, you know, to have those role models as a, you know, when you're when you're that at that age, and to have them like to know all these like female athletes is incredible. And that's, you know, I'm not saying that they didn't exist when I was young, because they did. I just didn't have as much access to them as I did the NBA, because obviously the NBA was super big and whatnot. Michael Jordan, and you know what I mean. Like that dominated the conversation, and that dominated the airways here in Canada. Like
Absolutely.
and so you know, I think what motivates me now is like, okay, we just need more female filmmakers across the board. And you know, there's something that I really gravitate towards. It's called shine theory, and it's like, it means like, you know, um, if I shine, like we all shine, and like a win for one of us is a win for all of us, and there's room for all of us at the table. And it's not about scarcity. Like I think that, you know, sometimes I will, okay, sorry, one last like story about
Yeah,
this is that
of course.
so yeah, so I like have always been an athlete first, athlete then and it was very, not until, you know, just a few years ago, and I was like, I guess like I'm an artist too, I'm a filmmaker.
Hmm.
But I always like, that was like my perception, like, you know, in high school I was, you know, the I was, you know, the point guard, I was the team captain, you know, blah blah blah. So oh yeah, I was always the like quote unquote jock, or like,
Hmm.
yeah. And I remember when I was just starting to get into the industry, I made friends with another female filmmaker, documentary filmmaker. And I remember she sent me an email that was like, and a bunch of us, that was like, hey, like here's a grant that I think everyone should apply to.
Hmm.
And I was so taken aback, because I was like, why are you sending this to me? Because aren't we competing? Like
Hmm.
aren't we vying for this spot? Like I was so taken aback. And I guess it was like my like athletic like competitiveness that was like coming to the like the forefront, that was like, you know, I need to, we're in competition and I need to beat you, and you know what I mean.
Hmm.
And like but these emails were, it wasn't just like a one-off, it was like, you know, whenever something came up, I would get like we'd all get this email blasted. And I was like, you know what, like it totally shifted my perception of things, of like we need to be helping each other. And we like, this is not a competition anymore. We need, especially because of what we face in the industry of the sort of the imbalance of things on screen, behind the camera, off screen, and whatnot. And really, truly, if you know, if one of us like walks through the door, like it's part of our job to help other female filmmakers get there, make the connections. Oh, here, like I think you should talk to this person and whatnot. And like I really do see that as like a motivation for me, and like telling stories that need to be told, and also helping other female filmmakers, as we all come up together. So yes, I'd say like that's one of the main things that's driving me in
Mhm.
my career right now.
That's a great little story and statement, and I think that makes an awesome high note to end it on. Some inspiration, because I think we're all looking for that, regardless of what your industry is or where you're at economically, where you're at mentally today. There's a struggle, right? We're all going through something, and there's various degrees of depth of how problematic that is. But I think those are some great takeaways. So I want to say thank you. I really enjoyed spending this hour, and getting to know you in this way it's been fun. This is a pretty unique opportunity. So thanks for taking time out of your morning to do it.
No worries. Thank you so much, Carson. It was a lot of fun talking, and I'm glad we finally were able to meet over Zoom in our new normal right now.
Yeah, exactly. And let me give a plug, right? I will have a link to Finding Big Country on YouTube, so that's there for you. And you also have a merchandise store
Yes.
attached to your other website, right?
Yes.
Findingbigcountry.com. Is that what it
Yes.
is?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
So
Thank you so much, Carson. Yeah.
yeah, those will both be there for you. And again, thank you so much. And we'll be in touch, right?
Sounds great. Stay safe.
Okay, you too.